Hi everybody, it's Chris, and welcome to part 2 of our vlog series on behind the scenes of little stories. After the last episode, we presented you with a list of 6 books to go ahead and vote on and choose. Not many of you did, naughty naughty, and the winner by far was The Tale of Peter Rabbit, from the 3 votes that we did get. So, Tale of Peter Rabbit with 3 votes, so we'll be reading that. That actually is the next part of the production process. Percival goes ahead and reads the actual story itself. This is done off camera usually, and then we go ahead and we make that a part of the editing process later. And also, Cub, since you remarked on the bookcases, we've taken some extra footage of our entire bookcases just for your viewing pleasure, so we'll go ahead and run those now. So there they are for you. I hope you saw some titles in there maybe that you're familiar with and maybe some that you're not. Like I said, they're hideously rearranged and overstuffed, so there's that. But we thought you might like to get a look at all the bookcases rather than just the small section of the one that we showed. So there's that. So now we're going to go ahead and we'll turn it over to Percival and read, as he reads rather, The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. So onwards to Percival.
Why, hello, friends. It's a pleasure to see you again. Have you been well since the last time that we were together? I do hope so. We care ever so much about each and every one of you, bigs, talls, and little ones, and everyone in between. This time around, Chris has asked me to go ahead and showcase my first part in recording the little stories process, which is recording the story itself after it's already been picked, which I understand those of you who chose to vote, and there weren't enough of you, mind you, I'm rather disappointed, naughty, naughty. Now then, The Tale of Peter Rabbit is what was chosen, so we'll be reading that. So let's go ahead and lay down that audio track, which you can see we're starting to run over there. And let's get in front of the microphone and make this story happen. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll see you again while we're actually doing the recording of the video section. So, onwards to the story. The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Once upon a time, there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Once upon a time there were 4 little rabbits, and their names were Flopsy, Mopsy, Cottontail, and Peter. They lived with their mother in a sandbank underneath the root of a very big fir tree. Now, my dears, now, my dear, no, no. Now, my dears, said old Now, my dears, said old Mrs. Rabbit one morning, you may go into the fields or down the lane, but don't go into Mr. McGregor's garden. Your father had an accident there. He was put into a pie by Mrs. McGregor. Now, run along and don't get into mischief. I am going out. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took her basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Then old Mrs. Rabbit took a basket and her umbrella and went through the wood to the baker's. She bought a loaf of brown bread and 5 currant buns. Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail, who were good little bunnies, went down the lane to gather blackberries. But Peter, who was very naughty, ran straight away to Mr. McGregor's garden and squeezed under the gate. First he ate some lettuces and some French beans, and then he ate some radishes. And then, feeling rather sick, he went to look for some parsley. But round the end of a cucumber frame, whom should he meet but Mr. McGregor? Mr. McGregor was on his hands and knees planting out young cabbages, but he jumped up and ran after Peter, waving a rake and calling out, "Stop, thief!" Peter was most dreadfully frightened. He rushed all over the garden, for he had forgotten the way back to the gate. He lost one He lost one of his shoes among the cabbages and the other shoe amongst the potatoes. After losing them, he ran on 4 legs and went faster, so that he might have gotten away altogether if he had not unfortunately run into a gooseberry net and got caught by the large buttons on his jacket. It was a blue jacket with brass buttons, and quite new. Peter gave himself up for lost and shed big tears, but his sobs were overheard by some friendly sparrows, who flew to him in great excitement and implored him to exert himself. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve. 3, 2, 1. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve. Or is it sieve? 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 We'll go with sieve. Mr. McGregor came up with a sieve which he intended to pop upon the top of Peter, but Peter wriggled out just in time, leaving his jacket behind, and rushed into the tool shed and jumped into a can. It would have been a beautiful thing to hide in if it had not had so much water in it. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath. Mr. McGregor was quite sure that Peter was somewhere in the tool shed, perhaps hidden underneath a flower pot. He began to turn them over carefully, looking under each. Presently, Peter sneezed. Kerchew! Mr. McGregor was after him in no time and tried to put his foot upon Peter, who jumped out of a window, upsetting 3 plants. The window was too small for Mr. McGregor, and he was tired of running after Peter. He went back to his work. Fortunate for Peter, yes? Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can. After a time, he began to wander about, going lippity-lippity, not very fast, and looking all around. He found a door in a wall, but it was locked, and there was no room for a fat little rabbit to squeeze underneath. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, An old mouse, so you can see that I have many takes. It's quite frustrating for Chris to edit. He's forever chiding me, but things have to be just so. Sorry, I shouldn't be talking to the camera, but there you are. 3, 2, 1. An old mouse was running in and over. 3, 2, 1. An old mouse was running in and out over the stone doorstep, carrying peas and beans to her family in the wood. Peter asked her the way to the gate, but she had such a large pea in her mouth that she could not answer. She only shook her head at him. Peter began to cry. Then he tried to find his way straight across the garden, but he became more and more puzzled. Presently he came to a pond where Mr. McGregor filled his water cans. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. She had... bother. 3, 2, 1. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat still. 3, 2, 1. A white cat was staring at some goldfish. She sat very, very still, but now and then the tip of her tail twitched as if it were alive. Peter thought it best to go away without speaking to her. He had heard about cats from his cousin, little Benjamin Bunny. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly... 3, 2, 1. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes. This is one of those examples where I'm not satisfied with the first take, so we do another, much to Chris's consternation. 3, 2, 1. He went back towards the tool shed, but suddenly, quite close to him, he heard the noise of a hoe. Scritch, scratch, scratch, scritch. Peter scuttled underneath the bushes. But presently, as nothing happened, he came out and climbed upon a wheelbarrow and peeped over. The first thing he saw was Mr. McGregor hoeing onions. His back was turned towards Peter, and beyond him was the gate. Peter got down very quietly off the wheelbarrow and started running as fast as he could go along a straight walk behind some black currant bushes. Mr. McGregor caught sight of him at the corner, but Peter did not care. He slipped underneath the gate and was safe at last in the woods outside the garden. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looking behind. 3, 2, 1. Mr. McGregor hung up the little jacket and the shoes for a scarecrow to frighten the blackbirds. Peter never stopped running or looked behind him till he got home to the big fir tree. He was so tired that he flopped down upon the nice soft sand on the floor of the rabbit hole and shut his eyes. His mother was busy cooking. She wondered what he had done with his clothes. It was the second little jacket and pair of shoes that Peter had lost in a fortnight. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. 3, 2, 1. I am sorry to say that Peter was not very well during the evening. His mother put him to bed and made some chamomile tea, and she gave a dose of it to Peter. 1 tablespoonful to be taken at bedtime. But Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail had bread and milk and blackberries for supper. My goodness, doesn't that look good? All those wonderful blackberries in the basket there. And the cream, oh, that does look good, doesn't it? Looks like they're quite enjoying themselves. The end. And now we must do something that I forgot to do in the beginning, which is to credit the illustrator. But rather than reread the entire book, we'll just simply record the frontispiece like we did at the beginning of the tale, and Chris will do his magic and edit it out seamlessly later. So, here we go. Very short. The Tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Pictures by Adriana Mazza Savosi. And there we have it, friends, the tale of Peter Rabbit, in what will become a flawless audio recording and wonderful reading once Chris is done working his magic on it, removing all the noise and all of my hems and haws and all of my retakes and mistakes. He does get rather irritated with me from time to time, but what can you do? It needs to be perfect, or at least as perfect as I can make it. For the little ones, of course. And also for myself a little bit, because I am a bit of a perfectionist. I can hear them yelling at me saying, "A bit? That's all?" Well, that's all for now, at any rate. So I will turn you back over to Chris, and will remind you that you are loved, that you are strong, and that you are not alone. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Hi everybody, it's Chris again, and we're back from the recording studio, as it were, where Percival has just no doubt laid down an endless array of mistakes and miscues and other things that I'm going to have to go ahead and edit out. It's kind of a surprise for me because I never know exactly until later exactly what it is that he's done. We're kind of pushing a little bit of co-fronting on this one, just simply to keep the continuity going. But once I actually get into the editing process of the audio file there, which is what becomes the actual recorded story, there's always a surprise or two waiting for me. So I doubt very much that this time is any different. And probably also for the video portions that we just filmed. So we'll look forward to that, and that will, once the audio track has been edited and everything, that will then go into the actual Little Stories episode, and we'll go ahead and we'll show you exactly as we go along where that happens out. But the next step for me is to go ahead and import that particular audio file there, the actual story itself, clean it up, and get the final editing for it, and have that track ready to go and integrate into the larger episode. So that's it for this time in part 2 of a video log on behind the scenes of Little Stories. Thanks for watching. We hope that you're finding this informative, or at least mildly interesting. If not, just feel free to skip ahead and check out the actual done episode itself. So that's it for this time, guys. We'd like to remind you, as always, that you are loved, that you are strong, and that you are not alone. It's Chris. We'll see you the next time. Bye, guys.